Hey guys, it's Julian, and today I'm super excited to be showing you how to make lo-fi techno like you hear in tracks like Dystopia and Block 4 by Introversion, as well as Sorrows of the Moon and Daydream by I Hate Models. As usual, you can get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets and all of that stuff from this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Let's get started. So, this is a loop you heard in the intro. We're at 130 BPM. First sound we have here is the kick, which sounds like this. So with this kick, it's kind of a little bit of a different style of kick. You can hear it's more bassy and round, and more like low-end focused than a lot of the other kind of kicks that I usually make on this channel. And yeah, so that's the first thing with the style. You know, like in those tracks I named at the beginning, it's not always about just having like a super hard-hitting, like just very strong kind of kick like you would do in a lot of other techno. This kick still cuts through the mix really well. And part of that is just, you know, mixing everything in a certain type of way. But for the most part, like you can hear, even with it cutting through the mix there, it's still just very bassy and very low-end focused. So what we got here is this kick. I'll show you what it sounds like with none of these effects here. So the dry kick sounds like this. So you can hear, yeah, it's just this very deep, you know, low-end heavy sort of kick. And then the first effect that we have on here is the saturator. So here's without this. And then with it. So you can hear this really helps with the attack of the kick. It's just kind of going into all the other stuff. But it's just a nice way to take it out of the sampler and just give it a bit more punch and a bit more power and fatness. And yeah, after that we have this audio effect track, which is the rumble. So you can see we have two chains. We got a dry chain with nothing on it. This is just a punch of the kick. And then we have a wet chain here, which is the rumble. So what this is it's just made using some reverb. I'll show you the way we do this. So it's just a little bit of reverb going into an amp, which you can hear makes it sound pretty crazy, but if you listen, it's giving it that really deep low end that we don't have just coming out of the reverb. And then after that, you just low pass it. And there you go, you have a techno kick. So yeah, that's how we do the rumble. And then I just have an EQ8 on there, cutting out 100 hertz to make room for the punch of the kick, as well as giving it a bit of a low end boost. And then I have this auto pan here, just making it kind of go up in volume like that. This just makes it a bit cleaner. I'll show you if I turn this off. And then on again. So that you can hear what it's doing. It's just helping to kind of, you know, allow it to be more focused and tight. So then I'll close out that so you can see. After the rumble, I have some effects. It's important to put effects on the kick and the rumble at the same time. This is really the kick and the bass in the track. So you want to really make it sound like one. You want to glue them together and make it not just sound like, you know, two separate things, but really make it feel like this one sound. So first thing we have here, these two drum buses. Here's without them. And then with them. So you can hear when I turn just the first one on, you can hear why we need to have two of them. It may seem a bit unorthodox, but honestly, you'd really be surprised. Like, this is one of those things where if it sounds good, it is good. Especially when you're trying to make something that sounds kind of lo-fi and more like grungy like this. You know, definitely not so much of a thing with using multiple distortions, but it's definitely just a really good way to get the most full sound possible. You can hear with just one, even on a pretty heavy setting. It's still pretty fat, but it's not quite that professional level yet. And then you bring in that second one, and there you go. And then after that, I just have this limiter. So what this is doing, I'll turn this off. And then turn it on. You can hear it's just giving it that little last bit of boost that it needs, just to make the punch of the kick hit really hard, as well as to kind of bring up the rumble. It really does that last little bit of gluing it together, like I was saying, like the kick and the rumble. Again, without it. And then with it. So yeah, there we go. And then the last thing we have on here is just this EQ8. This is doing a low end boost, as well as a low mid-range boost, and then a mid-range boost here. So here's without this. and then with it. So you can hear it's just one of those things where it's kind of like focusing the sound a bit more. And yeah, that is it for the kick. The next thing that we have here is this chord stab, which sounds like this. So I'll show you the notes for this one first. Here are the notes. It's basically just kind of based around like simple major and minor chord shapes. You can see like here we have, this is actually an E minor. We got like E, and then the fifth, B, and then another E up here. And then this is what makes it minor is we have, well, for one, we have G up here, the minor third, but then we also have the fifth again up here, and then a C, one note up from it. So, you know, simple stuff. Then this is a C major, I believe. And then we got an A minor. So again, it's pretty simple. It's just kind of like adding interesting voices. Like, for example, with this one, it's like this thing here. Having that in the middle of your chord adds a lot of tension. I've also done a similar thing with that. And then we also have like, you know, it's like major and minor chords, but it's not just basic major and minor triads. For the sound on this one, it's made using operator. What this is just a pretty simple FM saw wave sort of sound. Here's with no filter. So you can hear, yeah, it's just a saw wave, and then I have a square wave and two sine waves doing some FM with that. You can see I've got these detuned, and then it's just going into a low pass. And yeah, so the low pass has an envelope on it, you know. Just kind of giving it a bit more of a pluck to the sound. After that, I have this chorus. This is pretty self-explanatory, just kind of adding some dimension. Makes it sound a bit bigger. Then we have this echo. This is doing eighth notes, so, you know, pretty simple stuff there. With this one, it's pretty important for the sound, though, since it plays so sparsely, like it's only playing, you know, one chord every now and then. The echo going dun 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 like that is pretty important for the sound. After that, I have a bit of reverb. This is also just giving it some space, you know, making it a bit bigger and more full sounding. And then after that, we have two drum buses. So this is very similar to the kick. You can see these are both set really hard, actually. This is important, like, this, if you're going to use a sound like this, you really got to make sure it sounds full and big. And when I was putting this up against reference tracks, I was finding it just didn't quite have, like, that fullness to it until I added the second one. So again, it's not always about like doing things quote unquote the right way, but more so if it sounds good, it is good. So with this, you can see I've got these up pretty high. I've got the transients on both of them, so if I turn those off and then on, you can hear those really bring out the reverb and the delay, but also it just makes the chords hit a bit harder. And then the last thing on there is just this high pass filter cutting out the lawn. And that is it for the chord set. The next thing we have here is this vocal pad, which sounds like this. So the notes for this one are pretty simple. It's just going around E and B, so just E and then B the fifth. And then it goes up to C, an A there, so basically an A minor chord. And then here we have... So yeah, it's just kind of more like finding something that will fit interestingly with the chord stab. You know, you can hear it, it's just very much helping to carry out like what the chord stab is doing and kind of enhance that musically. Just adding like some ear candy in that sense. So for the sound on this one, the way I made it is this little vocal pad sample that I have. I'll show you what's in here. Yeah, so it's just like this vocal pad here. I put it into a granulator. And you can see what's happening there is that yellow line is bouncing around. So this is what the granulator is, the granular synth. Basically, it plays back a sample, but instead of playing the sample just from start to finish, it plays different parts of the sample. So that's what's happening there. And yeah, and then I got this being low passed a little bit inside of here. And that's pretty much it for inside of the synth. After that, I have this auto pan and the saturator. So these two are working together. basically the way that this works is, saturation or distortion in any form is all based on how much signal you're putting into it. Like if you put a louder signal into it, you get more distortion. You put a quieter signal into it, you get less distortion. So what this auto pan is doing is, you can see I have the phase all the way off, and this is just slowly, turning the volume up and down. And so you can hear, instead of just getting that crunchy, sort of crackly distortion the whole way, it makes it kind of like fade into that a little bit. And it's a little bit more of an interesting way to do it, where you get like a more nuanced sound, and it's not just one thing the whole time through, but it gives the sound some motion. Like when you're working with a sound like this, which is just a sample, it's not like when you're working with a synth and you can detune the oscillators and give the LFO on the filter and all that kind of stuff. Here you could put an LFO on the filter, but you gotta kind of find more interesting ways to give some motion and bring the sound to life. So that was the idea there. After that, I have a bit of chorus, just giving it kind of like a bit more width, spreading the sound out a bit. And then we have a bit of reverb. This is giving it space as well as spreading the sound out a little bit. And really making it big like that. And then the last thing we have on there is just an EQ8 cutting out the low end. And that is it for the vocal pad. Next thing we got here is the rim shot, which sounds like this. This is pretty simple. It's just like this kind of rim shot sound. This one is more so just about like the type of sound that you choose. Like just getting something that's kind of small like this, but has a nice texture. You can hear how it fits over the top of the kick. On that, I just have a bit of reverb, as well as, you can see the reverb is pretty short. Then we just got a bit of drum bass on there, and that is it for the rim shot. The next sound we have here is the ride, which sounds like this. So with this one, it's a pretty standard sort of like ride sound you'd hear in a lot of techno. With this one, I did do a bit of an interesting technique to make it a bit wider though. What I did here is I've taken this echo, and you can see I have this unsynced, and I have these on two separate tones, the left and the right ear. And what's happening here is, because you're getting this like spread out sound, you can see I also have it on the ping pong setting, it makes the ride sound so much bigger, and it really makes it sit in like the right place in the mix. A lot of times, especially when I was putting this up against reference tracks, I was finding that like you just really need to get that ride to sit right. It's like it can't be too loud and it can't be too quiet, and part of doing that is knowing how to spread it out without making it sound like too weird. Like sometimes I try this with chorus and stuff, and that can sound good, but I noticed in this mix it just didn't really sound right. But using the echo gives you a more like clear sound while still just spreading it out. So yeah, then I just have an EQ8 on there, cutting out the low end and giving it a pretty sharp high end boost. This kind of really makes it stand out. And then we just have this drum bus, which makes it fatter, more full. That is it for the ride. Next thing that we have here is the shaker. Pretty simple stuff. You can hear this just like kind of increasing the energy going into the hi-hats. Then we have this hi-hat here. So it's just like a pretty simple hi-hat. There's the original sample. You can see I shortened it a bunch. Then we have this drum bus on there. This helps to kind of fatten it up a little bit. I have all that percussion that I just showed you in a group together. Here's what it sounds like with no group processing. And then with everything. So it's kind of like with the kick and the rumble. It's like, kind of gluing things together and trying to make them feel more like one percussion group, as opposed to just like a bunch of different sounds. First thing here is the drum bus. You could hear this is really helping to fatten everything up and kind of put it into a more even space sonically speaking. You can see we got the trap up bit, got the crunch up bit, it's on the hard setting. Also have the transients up, so that helps make everything hit a bit harder. And the only other thing on there is this EQ8, which is just cutting out the low end, doing a bit of a high end boost to make it a bit sharper. And yeah, so that is me for the percussion bus. And that is also going to be it for this video, guys. So I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the project file and samples, MIDI and presets, all that stuff in this video in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because everything is already available. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.